Hi, I'm Antonella Spatola from Empowerment Self-Defense based in Brisbane, and I wanted to give you some unique insights as to what I think Australia is missing when it comes to violence prevention. One woman is killed every week by their partner, and I really think that the Australian government, lawmakers, organisations and the communities are focusing too much on rehabilitation and not enough on actual prevention. When I hear people talk about prevention, what I hear is that they're talking about prevention as a collective, what we as a society can do. Instead, I think empowerment self-defense, what we focus on is when we talk about prevention, we're actually putting the focus on the individual, having the tools and the knowledge and the plethora of choices that they can make while violence is happening in real time. So we're focusing on the individual having all those skills to be able to deter violence from escalating. There's lots being done here to prevent violence against women from happening. But what I do hear is that they are putting so much focus and responsibility on the perpetrator, and 100% we believe that the victim is never to blame and the perpetrator needs to be 100% accountable. And teaching society and organizations and the individuals on how to talk to somebody if they feel that that particular person may be in a DV situation. So we're focusing too much, I believe, on after the fact instead of focusing on teaching girls and women in ESD classes to be able to have the tools and have a look at what violence looks like, because as you know, there's all different types of violence, and we want to focus on teaching the individual the ability that they already have within themselves to be able to deal with violence as it's happening. What I feel is missing is the approach that we're putting too much focus on prevention after the fact instead of prevention while violence is happening. So what makes ESD different from other self-defense programs? We say it's a holistic approach. It teaches the students on a level of progression, it's layered, experiential, and it's easy to teach, and it's easily retainable by the student. It also gives the individual the ability to participate and share their stories. We also find that it is healing, and students do leave feeling much more empowered, more informed, more, in an empowered position to be able to take control of their situation. The advantage of the ESD classes is, or one of the advantages, that it is led by a female. There's also co-ed classes where there is a male and a female instructor together teaching a co-ed class. But one of the things that I say is when you go to a self-defense class and the instructor is female, it just gives you that ability to relate, and the instructor understands what the women have gone through. To some extent, depends on their own personal experience. I like to say the example of, there's great male gynecologists out there. They're very knowledgeable, and they want to help and they want to support the women in that area. But there's another level of, I don't want to use the word closeness, but relatedness if you have a female gynecologist. So she gets what it's like to go through certain things that we as women biologically and physically have to go through. The girls and the women have the ability to share their stories, be heard without judgment and criticism, and that leads to healing, and their bonds do happen bonds between the students because they've just shared such a personal story that they may not have shared with others before in fear of being criticised and judged. So the ESD classes are very healing. So in the ESD classes, what we do is that we reunite the innate power that the girls and the women already have, reintroduce them to their voice, being aware of their thought patterns, and which do create breakthroughs. It unleashes a pattern of thinking that doesn't serve them and makes them look at things from a different perspective. I play devil's advocate, and I do challenge some thought processes, and this is done in a supportive, non-judgmental way, but it's what they've known. So when you know better, you do better, as Maya Angelou has said before, one of my favorite sayings. And we teach the strategies and concepts of what self-defense is, not just the physical concepts, which is important and it's also a part of what we teach, but we teach the students concepts of what self-protection actually looks like, because it's not just blocking a punch. It is so often the case where we find ourselves with family members, partners, even children, neighbours, colleagues, where we find ourselves that our rights have been violated because somebody else shows a much more malicious or aggressive intent, and in fear of being judged or losing our jobs or not being given an opportunity or not feeling accepted, we do feel that we are giving in, and by the need in society of being polite and not offending anybody, we succumb to what the other person wants us to do, even though we don't want to. So one of the things that I say is no is the most simplest and most powerful word that you can say. You don't need to justify, you don't need to judge it, and explain it, but I want you to ask yourself, if you say no, what have you got to gain? And if you say yes, what have you got to lose? So we're teaching these concepts of what self-defense means to you. My love for personal development can really be expressed in the ESD classes. I work with the individual to find out, what their own personal blocks are, what makes them feel that they don't have the ability to say no. Is it because they've been brought up in a very strict household, cultural issues, have they had negative experiences before when they stood up for themselves? And we break that down and we look at it and we change and rewire the pattern in the brain to start finding new ways of expressing your own right to feel safe and to be heard. So we play different games, and we also look at the relationships that we have in our lives, whether it's with our partners, our children, our colleagues, our friends, and we start really looking and assessing, are we happy in those relationships, and how do we want to improve? So there's my little insight of what ESD is doing in Australia, focusing on prevention in real time. And we want to work with other organisations around Australia in the Asia Pacific area of introducing more empowerment self-defense classes and teaching more women to become ESD instructors, so they can go to their communities and start teaching women and girls in schools what to do if they are faced by a violent situation, or even just a situation, a verbal situation with their friend where they don't feel safe, or they feel coerced to do something they don't want to actually go through different strategies and role plays to be able to deal with that if it comes up again. So keep in touch and support Empowerment Self-Defense Global. Get in touch with us at ESD Australia. We can organise a tailor-made program for your needs, and we look forward to collaborating together.